mix your paint, but you're not familiar with the term boxing because you're a do-it-yourselfer, which is normal. You don't know. That's why you watch this video. Just come down here and let's show the people what we mean by boxing. So the paint store mixed the paint color. They added color to the paint. Question for the do-it-yourselfer. Do you think after the machine mixed the paint that the color is exactly the same between this gallon and this one? Do you think there might be a shade difference? If you say yes, you're right. And that's why we're going to mix the paint, because they're not the same color. And you'll find that out when you use 1 gallon and then in the middle of one wall where you ran out, you use this gallon and you say, well, it's different. There's shadows. It's because the colors were not exactly the same. And so we're going to mix the paint together in a larger bucket in a process called boxing the paint. And all it means is doing this. Whenever you're dumping it into a 5, don't let that first amount come out too hard. It'll flash right back up in your face. Do not throw this paint out. There's a lot of paint in this right now. Now we're going to integrate the contents of what was in this gallon and that gallon in here by stirring it and getting as much of this residual paint out of these 2 gallons as well. Why? Do you think that you can cut your walls where the ceiling is with this paint and roll the walls with what's in here? You'd be wrong if you said yes. You have to scoop this out, put it into this bucket. There's several ounces of paint left in here and in here. If you say, who cares? Let's just cut with this. Cutting meaning you brush and you cut near the top of your wall. There's a difference in color in what's in here right now and what's in here. So you want to get as much of this out, put it in here, and then pour a couple of inches of paint into here. Okay, let's go to the next task. So for a couple of minutes, I would say 2 minutes is completely sufficient. We now integrate the contents of our 2 cans in this bigger bucket, completing the process called boxing. And after Philip is done with that, we're going to take a couple of inches of what's in this bucket and put it in here so that we can cut with this Purdy. This is one of my go-to brushes. I love the Purdy brush. Many of my viewers ask, hey, what kind of brush do you use? Well, one of my viewers told me about Wooster Pro. Love Wooster Pro, P-R-O. And this is a Purdy 3-inch angle sash brush. Love this brush too. So, a lot of my viewers love the paint videos. They love them because more people paint than wallpaper. So it's understandable. And we're always learning on how to do paint projects, right? When you're cutting, there's a few things that are absolutely essential. Number 1, we take for granted the height at which you're going to do this task is very important. If your hand is not just above your head, and I'm talking no more than 4 to 5 inches above your head, you're not going to be able to successfully cut. 2, if you're using the wrong brush to cut, the cheaper the brush, the worse the outcome. Okay? 3, What about the amount of paint? You do not want to be cutting like this. A do-it-yourselfer. Look. This is, you're fired. You do this, you're fired. Can't do that. You have to maintain a clean brush. Right? Because the brush drips paint. And even though you might be doing a good cut job, you look like a sloppy person and you can't do that in somebody's house. But even to do it yourself, you're gonna have paint all over the floor. Okay, we need a good brush. We need enough paint on the brush. We need sufficient height. Safety. Gotta be comfortable on your ladder. You don't wanna be doing this on a chair. Okay, enough of the do-it-yourselfer. Now, the way you hold the brush. There's a few ways to hold a brush. I'm a lefty. Your fingers, the closer they are to the action, the worse the outcome. Your fingers have to be a sufficient. Did you ever wonder why a brush, the material that's the brush, is more than 3 inches? You need that in order to get the proper action. And the barrel, the shiny metal thing, is the closest you're gonna get to the action. So the people who made the brush, they were painters, right? Probably. You don't wanna be any closer than this. And you wanna be just about right here when you're holding the brush because you're controlling the action of the bristles. Let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna show you. Let me show you how hard it is to cut far away from the bristles. Okay, I'm holding it up here. This is not the way to do it. I don't have a lot of control on my brush from 10 inches away. I'm a painter, so I'm going to be able to do it. But I guarantee you that if you, the do-it-yourselfer, you start doing this like you're that guy. Who's the guy on TV? We're going to put a tree here, a little happy tree. I forget, but he's a famous painter. He's gone, he's dead. You want to be near the barrel. Remember when you were in grammar school, you had to hold it a certain way? Well, you want to be, test it out. You want to be as close to the action. When I say the action, I mean where the paint is right now, with your fingers as possible. Comfortably. It may be a little further away than what I have. I'm not on top of that barrel, but I'm on it. Look at the control I have. I'm squeezing this. I don't want hitting the ceiling. The ceiling's painted, we're not touching it. Now, can you zoom in for the folks? The secrets to good cutting is you want a lot of paint up there. Why? So your brush doesn't get stuck. You don't put a lot of paint on it. I'll show you what happens. Now, do you think I'm moving slowly? I'm not. You gotta move quickly. You have better control over your hand. Watch this. Let me draw a straight line for you, going fast. Now let me do it slowly. Let me try to cut a perfect line slow. You see how it just kind of went up and down? I'm going slow, I'm going slow, I'm going slow. You see the qualitative difference? You can already see a wave. Look at the straightness of that line. Okay, I hope I make my point. So we want to move fairly quickly. And don't try to kill all the birds with one stone. Go back, okay? You want to cut twice. So the first pass, you don't have to be perfect. Now, can you zoom in? I want to show them how to get that line up there. Okay, watch this. I discharged the contents of my brush a few inches below the cut line. I don't want to soak in my brush up there. I'm going to get it on the ceiling. Now watch this. Bring it down here. I'm going to be dipping into this. I'm not going to leave this here. Watch this. Now look, I'm pressing the brush here. 2 inches below the ceiling, I press the brush. I thin out, look, see how I thin it out there? I'm not going up there with a full loaded, what I mean by that is all the bristles together. I'm thinning them out. Okay, so let's do it. Watch this. Pushing them, I'm just bringing an inch worth. All those bristles are not touching that corner. Look, I'm flattening them out. I only have about an inch worth of bristles making contact. What are the rest of the bristles doing? They're holding on to the paint that I need to do it. Okay? So let's notice how I changed the direction of my brush now. You see the angle on my brush? Different angle. I'm using a different angle. I'm a lefty. I'm getting into the corner. I turn the brush around. I am not doing it like this. Look. I'm turning the brush around. Look. Can you zoom in? So I got enough paint on there. I'm not going too slow. I'm at a safe distance on my ladder. Okay, I'm using all of the things that we just discussed. Now, when you go to an adjacent wall, you can't get in that corner that easily. So I'm gonna just wiggle my brush. Look, I'm pushing on it. I want to bring that out just a couple of inches. See that? Now I don't have to deal with that corner. Now I put a little more paint on this because we got to fill this in. Now we're dealing with a texture. We're going to do a lot of wiggling. Texture is hard to get in and out of the nooks and crannies. So I wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it. Then I brush. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle to get into the nooks and crannies. Then I brush. So we're cutting on a textured wall. And the technique is different than on a flat wall. You're using a lot more paint. Texture takes a lot more paint than a flat wall does, as you can imagine. Now, let's talk about the direction of the paint, of the brush. Okay, I start out over here. I pull toward my body. Right? Fine. Going back and forth. I'm going back and forth 3 inches below the cut line. Now watch this. I go back up here. I pull it in. Watch this. I lift it off like I'm taking off on a plane. Look. I didn't do this. Look. I'm feathering in my application. First of all, if I do this, look, let's exaggerate the effect. If I do this, watch this. Bring them in close to that. Well, folks, that's what you're going to be doing if you don't feather your paint. So let me show you how to do it. When you go back and forth and you've colored your wall, I want you to feather the application. This is done already. There's no need to go back over it. If you do, you're going to get a bunch of stipple. So what do? When you move along in increments, where you lift your brush off is going to be just slightly beyond the point at which you finished your last segment. This would be a grave fault. All the way over there. This is setting up already. This is on for 2-3 minutes already. Don't touch it. Let me show you what I mean. Let's do that again. So zoom in close and we'll show them what I mean by feathering. Perhaps if you go on my left side, it would be better. If you just go on my left side. So I put my paint down here. This is 12 inches here. We can make this a little longer. That's 15 inches to 20. That's about 20 inches. Okay. Now I come up close to where I got to cut. Nice bristle action going on there. Don't try to be Superman. If you miss a spot, no problem. You're going to go back over it. That's 98% done. Now watch this. What was my last segment? It was here. Remember, I finished the last segment here. So we'll make a mark there. You don't want to be messing with this. It's setting up already. I still got time here. It's nice and wet. Come in close. Okay, so now I want the folks to see the last painter got the wall paint on the ceiling. You see that in there? Can you see that through your screen? I just want them to see that. You see that? Discoloration on the ceiling. So now I have to paint my color there so you don't have three colors. My new color, the old color, and the white ceiling. So the customer is fine. I'm just gonna try to make that look as neat as possible by just bringing the brush onto it, because the last painter essentially painted part of their ceiling by doing too quick on the cut. Back to our task. Okay, now I have to lift my brush where I last stopped. I'm coming up to it. I see it under my elbow. Watch this. You see that? Watch this again. Slow motion. Do it again. Here's my point right here. This is setting up. If I touch it, bring them in close. That's what you're going to see. And notice that it's in the same direction all the time when I finish. Look. You don't have to get fanatical about it. If you go an inch beyond, no big deal. But you don't want to be doing this over here. You don't want to be lifting off way beyond your last segment ended. And we always finish off in the same direction. Even though we do this back and forth, we finish off like this. Because at night, you will see, this is what you'll see when you look at your paint job. A bunch of stroke marks going in all different directions. Before Thanksgiving. Making somebody's room look nice. So now, I'm just going to show you, for those of you who are new to my channel, the benefits of using a hand masker. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, this is a great tool. Some of you buy big houses. You tell me on emails, I bought a 4,000 square foot house. Get one of these. I see the work that a lot of you do, and a lot of you, thankfully, I'm grateful that you attribute it to my videos. So for those of you who are watching my video who are pros, please be patient, because a lot of pros are very critical of the time I take to explain things, and I'm speaking to the do-it-yourselfers. I urge you to get this approximate $60 tool. 9-inch paper, 1-inch tape, and it will protect the wood. Now, the wood already has paint on it. I understand, but I'm going to show you the benefits of using this. You see what I can do here? I can give a nice, clean line. I hold it down, and I pull. And then, using two hands, holding this out, and pushing this in. I can make a nice mask line. I hold that down, detach it from the hand masker. Now, holding this apart, I can now determine where this is going to land. And as you can see, I go right onto my base trim, which is the next protected surface, thereby making a very nice seal. See, the previous painter was sloppy, but this is a professional manner of protecting surfaces you don't want to paint. Now, will the new paint get into this tape? What do you think at home? Well, I'm going to tell you that in all likelihood, unless you're very conscious of it, and you're painting with what I call a dry brush. Let me show you what a dry brush is. This is dry brush, look. Do you really think that's going to get under the tape? No. But you're going to have to paint it a couple of times, right? No, that's not going to get under your tape. But if you do this, and you go up to that corner and you do this, that's going to get under there because you're using too much paint. So what I suggest that you do is take clear caulking and run a bead to protect the point at which the tape touches the wall. And while the caulking is wet, go right into the corner and brush it in. You will force the caulking into the tape. Not only that, you will color the caulking and your cut line will be perfectly straight. Unless you want to use a dry brush. It's a lot of work. Spend the time, spend the effort, get the clear caulking, and just put it in there. Okay, let's go to the next frame. We have a hole that was made for a cable. I'm going to fill it in. So, water first when you're mixing mud. So we have a couple of those around the job. Let me take this away. Look like it's out. Look like it's dry. Look like it's pink. I like to push it in. Then, see, I'm getting it in there. Then do that. Push it in. That's more like it. If you want to strengthen that, it's always a good idea. This will give you something behind your repair, something into which your mud can attach itself. And something to block the cavity behind it. Not a bad idea to do that. Some people wouldn't do that. Other people would do it. Other people would do it completely different. It all works. But one thing I will do is push it in there. Nice and tight. Okay. And we'll let that dry. So we have a new roller that hasn't been wet yet. If you don't get the roller saturated, you'll have a different thickness of paint where you first begin as opposed to where you paint as you progress forward. So this is a damp roller. We wet it so that we can make it more sponge-like, where it's absorbing the paint. So this is a mistake that many people will make. You see all of those areas there? Let's call them holes, right here, here. Do you think that roller is saturated with paint? No, but your average do-it-yourselfer will go right over and start painting, right? And then they go, and they continue. Absolute mistake. As this was going on, the dampness in my roller was mixing with the paint, and it thinned it out because there's water here, because I spun my roller before I used it. I want to saturate the fibers so that it's easier to clean, but it paints better when you make the fibers damp. It's not going to be wet, it's spinning. I spin it with a hose, get the fibers wet, and then I spin it, and then the centrifugal force of the roller spinning makes the fibers damp. So now I have a damp roller. Now watch this. Do you see a lot of holes here, like we did before? Why not? Because you have more paint on this roller here. If you have more paint on the second column, don't you think it's going to look different than the first? I'm speaking to the do-it-yourselfers. So, how do you fix this issue? When you first dip it in, here's what you do. Go to the middle of the wall. Work the painting. Now, your roller is universally saturated with paint. And so now when I go back to my first column, my second, third, fourth, and all the way down the wall, is going to have the same thickness of paint, otherwise known as millage. It's going to have the same color because the dampness or the wetness in the roller will not be diluting the color as it will in the first one, because you've discharged right here. Just show them this. In this patch here, you've discharged the dampness in the roller, and you've integrated it with the paint, and you've forced the fibers to drink in the paint, the water, and now we're ready to go with this lamb's wool roller. Really good roller. Not cheap. It's one of the best, if not the best. So what do? We let this dry. It's only the first coat anyway. But we're not starting here. Here's where we're going to start. Now, this is how you're going to paint a wall. You want your whole wall to be wet at the same time. You're going to keep a wet edge. I'll explain. And you're going to cut and roll simultaneously. We're doing our second cut. So with roller, and brush. We're gonna keep the whole wall wet. Watch this. I'm going as close to my ceiling as I can to avoid the halo effect. Put in YouTube Spencer Colgan halo effect. How to avoid. Now, my top is completely painted together at the same time. Watch this. That's it. I finished my stroke in one direction, not all the way different. And then I finish to the end of the wall. It's only a 12-foot wall anyway. After I go all the way to the end, while the top is wet, I'm going to roll my wall. Let's continue so they get the full understanding of what I'm talking about. The last painter, you're not looking at my paint on the ceiling. That's the last painter. Okay? It's a reddish brown paint. I finish in the same direction all the time. Now my brush leaves one finish, sort of like a brush bristle finish. And my roller leaves another. How do I get the brush marks off of the wall? Well, there's only one way. I have to roll my paint over the brush marks. And since I can't get my roller as close to the ceiling as I can my brush, I have to brush and roll. It's the only way I can do it. My top is wet now, right? While it's wet, I'm going to roll my top after I just brushed it. And I'm going to do that horizontally. Then I'm going to vertically roll. And it's all going to look perfectly universal. Since my roller's on a stick, I may as well take advantage. I'm going to get as close to the ceiling as I can, but not as close as the brush did. One more time, nice and close. Nice and close. You see how my brush and my roller are now? You can't tell where I brushed and where I rolled, because I'm doing it while it's all wet. So let's finish it off. The idea is I want to roll over my brush marks. I just feathered it, I lifted my roller. And we can finish, let's do this all in the same direction. Let's finish off like this. All the way back over to the other wall. Come on, let's do it. Very important that you go in the same direction. I can see where I left off. Now, I have a completely universal application of my paint. It's universal, meaning it's all the same thickness, it's all the same wetness, it's all the same color. Now, I'm gonna roll. Notice where I start. 15 inches from the ceiling. I don't want too much paint up there. You ever see a YouTube video that tell you to do this, do a W? It's all nonsense. I don't know who or where they got that from. My roller's not dripping wet. Okay, where am I going to start my roller now? Here? No. I'm going to start here and bring my paint over there. You don't want pooling. P-O-O-L-I-N-G. What's that? That's what would happen if you brought a saturated roller on top of already wet paint. Notice I just flipped my roller. Did you see that? This bar here on this handle is the forward edge. You're going in the direction of this tool right here. All the way up as close as I can, straight down. Straight down. Okay. Now, as I'm rolling in the direction toward the camera, you're learning some things about where I start my roller on the wall, how much paint I have on my roller. You know that the wall is all wet now. This might be drying, but my edge is wet. What is my edge? Right here. That's my edge. My edge is wet. I'm keeping a wet edge. So we can say, theoretically, the whole wall is wet at the same time. There's no paint here, but there's going to be. And since I'm going to be keeping a wet edge, it's all going to dry looking the same. I want you to be thinking about this thing. Why do I want that on my forward motion? What do you think is different about the sides of the roller when you have something, one of these on one side? What's different? Don't you think one of the sides has a little more pressure on it than the other that doesn't have that metal? What would that do? Wouldn't that cause a ridge? Bring them in close. I'll show them exaggeratedly what I'm talking about. So we're all humans. We don't always put the same amount of pressure, but this is going to have more pressure on it than this because I'm putting my pressure on this. Watch the result. You see the difference here? This side is getting more paint. I mean, you don't even have to go that close. There's even a missing thing here. Just back up a bit. Bring them in close. This side has an edge, and this doesn't. So how do we reason that this should be on the forward edge? Because watch what I'm doing. Just watch what I'm doing. Look at the direction I'm going in, and you'll figure it out. What happens to the ridge as I move in the direction in which the ridge is formed? What happens? I'm eliminating it. If I were to do this, painting in this direction, how silly would that be? I'm leaving ridges as I go this way. No, we want to do it this way. Believe me, if you want to do it right, do it this way. Professional painters don't even do this, and their jobs show it. Just because you're a professional doesn't mean that you're doing it right. And painters have told me this. I bring it all the way up to the top. Then I roll straight down. You don't see any of this. That will look like a disaster after it's done. I can do this in the interim. That's all fine. But the finish has to be this. Look. All the way up, all the way down. Do it again. All the way up, all the way down. You want to prep the area? No problem. Bring it in, go in any direction you want. That's all fine. But the final stroke has to be in the same direction, the same pressure. Everything's got to be the same for the finished product to be the same. Sorry. All the way up, all the way down, all the way up, as close to that trim as you can get it, all the way down. Stop. Don't stop there. We have stipple here now. So we're gonna go, yes, this is phonetic, but that's okay. Now, you can't see it in your camera, but I'm only gonna put pressure on this part of it. The right side is not touching. And there you have it. It's a humid day. It's drying slowly. If I didn't have a texture on this wall, I would tell you to put a paint extender in the paint so that you can facilitate this perfect finish. And as you know, I've given you 2 paint extenders on my channel. Floatrol for water base and Penetrol for oil. And I've given you alternatives for those 2 as well. Floatrol for the water base and Penetrol for the oil. And that is how you paint the wall. Make sure that they look at the top. The top has been cut in with a brush. It has been rolled in with a roller horizontally and then vertically painted in order to give this perfect universal finish. And that's how we'll be doing the rest of the room. And that's how we finished all of the 3 walls in the room. That wall right there got wallpapered. Thanks for watching my channel, and come back and see me on the next one.